had posted something on Facebook a while back, and I remember talking about hatred opposing love. And somebody corrected me and they said, no, actually, fear is the opposite of love. In reality, love has no opposite. Love is a divine principle. Love is an eternal principle. There is no opposite to love. There's nothing that really can oppose love. When we say that fear is the opposite of love, it's true in a sense that fear opposes love, but it's only true in regards to the idea that fear is dispelled by love, and fear is a way to shadow love. But love has no opposite. Love is eternal. There is only love. And the fact is that we are creatures of love. That's truly who we are. We are creatures of love. Now, what fear is a thought. Fear is a thought form. And fear is a thought that we are alone and that we're vulnerable. So if you are feeling alone and vulnerable, you're going to have a fear. You're going to have fearful thoughts. And to whatever degree you are not experiencing the reality of who you are, and that is a creature of love, you will be experiencing some sort of fear response. Experiencing fear is usually a confession to the universe and to ourselves that we don't believe that we have any connection to our creator, our source, that we are all alone and separate. And anytime we are experiencing fear, it's a testament to the idea that our ego mind has us hooked, because the ego trades in fear. That's what the ego is. The ego is there to convince us that we're all alone. Now, if you knew that you were always at one with your creator, you wouldn't fear, because love has no opposite. Love dispels all fear. Love dispels anything that's unlike itself. And if you realize that that's who you are, and that you and your creator are one, and that there is nothing but that, there would be nothing to fear. The idea of fear would seem silly to you. But there's nobody on this earth that really is fully convinced of that, that they are completely creatures of love and that they are at one with their creator. And as we walk about this world, we have images that are constantly reminding us and trying to prove to us how separate and alone each of us is. When we are in a world where we have a bunch of entities that believe that they are separate and they are fearful, then they're fearful also of one another. And we have a lot of evidence to support the idea that that separation is real and that there's plenty to fear, right? You look on the news, there's plenty to fear. There's plenty to be afraid of. You could be the victim of a home invasion. You could get some kind of disease. You could get into an accident. Somebody could rape you. Somebody could steal from you. There's all kinds of things to be afraid of here. And there's all kinds of practical reasons why fear is real and why fear is something that everybody has to contend with. Spirit doesn't teach that. Spirit teaches that this world doesn't exist the way we think it does. Spirit teaches us that this world is a product of an idea. The idea itself being that we are separate from our creator, that we are separate from love, that we are all alone. And that the reason why we have fear and the reason why we have experiences which are fearful are because we made a decision that we are separate and alone. And that's because our minds are powerful, and that there is no such thing as a thought that doesn't give rise to form on some level. What we do with that information usually is we discount it and we say, no, I'm not powerful. I'm insignificant. I'm all alone. And my mind is not powerful. And when we start thinking that our thoughts are not powerful, that gives us a sense of comfort, because then we don't believe that we have any power over anything. That gives us this weird sense of comfort that our thoughts are impotent, that we have no power, and therefore what we're doing in this world to protect ourselves is warranted. And it justifies what we do in this world to protect ourselves. Even if that comes down to attacking other people or defending ourselves or whatever we need to do to make it through this very scary and insane world that we live in. But once we realize that our thoughts are not impotent, that our thoughts are very powerful, then we have to contend with the realization that our thoughts are responsible for our experience here. And that puts things in a very different light. And people get very upset when they hear things like, my thoughts are responsible for what I experience here, because they cry that we are blaming the victim and things like that, which is absolutely ridiculous. We're all victims of the ego. We are all equally victims of our ego mind. Okay, that we are all victims of this world. But on another level, this world doesn't exist the way we think it does. On another level, there is nothing that we have to fear. So what we have then is we have to contend with the idea that there's this intermediary between the real experience of love that we are as souls and this fearful world where so many bad things happen and that there's so many things to be afraid of. There is this intermediary, and that's our inner guidance. That inner guidance that was put there by our Creator at our creation to guide us and lead us out of the world of fear and into the world of truth. But that guidance system doesn't do us any good if we don't use it, if we don't recognize that it's there, if we don't acknowledge that we have help. But if you realize that you have help and you train your mind to listen to that help, then what you can realize is that as you walk through your day-to-day experiences, you are not walking alone. You're not all by yourself. But the world doesn't want you to believe that. The world's trained you that you're all by yourself, that you're all alone, that you have to fend for yourself. So it takes a great deal of effort to come back again and again and again to the realization that I have help. I'm not alone. In any moment of time and point of space, I can ask for help. I can be directed, I can be led, and I can be guided by infinite intelligence. And once we realize that, then we realize that we really don't have anything to fear. We don't. There's nothing for us to fear, because that guidance keeps reminding us that outside of this world, there's nothing about us that is destructible. This world can destroy our bodies. This world can harm each other in that regard. But we don't live in this world. This world isn't real, ultimately. And once we realize that, and once we get clear that we have guidance, then we actually have power over this world. We actually have power over this world, that we have the ability to be guided into the right types of thinking, the right types of activities that enable us to have experiences in this world which are safe, which are happy, which are joyous, which are helpful. When we discipline our minds to walk with guidance every step of the way, rather than trying to do everything all by ourselves, we start catching glimpses of the world that exists in reality versus this world of perception that we have created for ourselves as a collective. It's a scary-ass world that we live in. It's a very scary world. There's no two ways about it. This is a very terrifying place to be. But the good news is you don't live here. And the good news is that you've got help every single step of the way. When we experience fear in this world, we are showing ourselves that we have made a decision against ourselves. Anytime we are experiencing fear in this world, we are demonstrating that we're trying to think all by ourselves, all alone. But if we have a resolution of fear, then we get the demonstration that we are listening to that eternal guidance that's always within us, that celestial truth of which is actually who we truly are. But it's so far away from the thought systems of the ego mind that creates our experiences in this world. It seems like it's an external, sometimes, force. But once we're listening to that force, then the fears start to disappear. And so when we are experiencing a fear leaving us, then we know we're listening to a part of our minds that's in tune with the truth. When we are experiencing fearful thoughts, then we know that we are listening to a part of our mind that's tuned to the lie, to the separation. When we are afraid, it means that we're not trusting, right? Because if you're afraid of something, you know that you can't trust it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be afraid of it. If you're afraid of some occurrence in this world, it's because you're not trusting that there is safety for you. You're not trusting that there's protection for you. You're trusting that something outside of you has all the power. And that's very scary. You may not realize that anytime you feel upset or anxious or worried, that you are actually declaring to the world that you don't trust. But that's exactly what's happening. Because if you realized how connected you are to infinite intelligence, and that it's just a matter of shifting your mind to what you're listening to, then you wouldn't be afraid. You wouldn't be upset. You wouldn't be anxious. And I know that's true for me because every single time during my day that I get annoyed or upset or any of that, I realize that those are different manifestations of fear that I'm experiencing. And when I'm experiencing those ideas of fear, never once is it because I'm listening to that guidance. Never once is it because I'm tuned into that eternal guidance. It's all because I'm trying to think all by myself. I'm trying to think all by myself. What do I do? What do I do? How do I get out of this? How do I fix this? How do I do this? Right? And that all that does is what? Compound the fear. So what I have discovered is that if I can discipline my mind, that in the midst of those fears, that I can take some time to take a few breaths and to ask to be shown the truth about that situation, the fear disappears immediately. So what I've disciplined myself to do is when I'm experiencing fear, I take a breath, I let go, if I remember to do it. I take a breath, I let go of as much tension as I possibly can, and I say, I dedicate this situation to infinite truth. Let truth reveal itself in this situation here and now. And I always feel that fear starting to melt immediately when I do that. I dedicate this situation to truth. Let divine truth reveal itself to me here and now. Now, in the 12 steps, we hear a lot about let go and let God. And that's actually a very high-level esoteric truth that they uncovered. If you can let go of your controlling a situation when you're in the midst of fear and ask that a higher part of your consciousness take over for you, the fear almost immediately disappears because you know that you're not personally responsible for the outcome. One of the reasons why we get so afraid is because we know we're incapable by ourselves of making anything worthwhile happen. We are inadequate by ourselves as egos, the way we think of ourselves in this world, which is not the truth of who we are, by the way. But when we start thinking about who we are as these insignificant little egos all by themselves, flailing about, trying to get their needs met, and then we think that intelligence is going to be able to come up with the idea to get out of any problem. Of course you're afraid. You should be afraid if you're depending on that. If you're depending on that small-minded self to get you out of a problem, you have every reason to be afraid. But the good news is that you don't have to depend on that little mind. Because for one thing, that little mind isn't the truth of who you are to begin with anyway. It's just a personality that you've constructed and that you've convinced yourself that you are. But in addition to that, there is a power that is connected to you that has all wisdom and access to infinite intelligence that knows every single thing there is to know. And if you can let go of your small-minded self's hold on a situation, which is always a toboggan ride to hell, and ask for that infinite intelligence to take over, then that whole let go and let God thing makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Of course. Now, the idea that there's a force of consciousness that's infinite, that has access to all knowledge, the idea that that force of consciousness could be personally interested in your well-being sometimes is a hard thing for people to swallow because they really do believe they're insignificant. We've really convinced ourselves that we really are insignificant and unimportant. And if there is a God, I'm sure they've lost my file. If there is a God, I'm sure that they don't have enough time to think about me. That's the genesis of all fearful thoughts and experiences right there. And it's such an important thing to remember because that's what original sin means. Original sin isn't something you did that's bad and that you're being punished for. Original sin is an esoteric concept that is you used your mind to consider yourself insignificant. And so then you created an experience of being insignificant and separate from your creator. And then you have a whole world that you get to look at and experience and interact with that's a reflection of that. And that's all that myth of the fall from grace from the Garden of Eden is talking about, is decisions that we made. But that one decision, that one idea, that one thought form that I'm separate from my creator and that I'm all by myself, I was created in the past and I'm left here to fend for myself, that idea is the kingpin to every problem in our lives. When we have that point of view, that we're insignificant and all alone and by ourselves, not powerful. And then we create religions based on that idea, then we get these ideas that God is something to be afraid of, that this creator is something that is mad at us and seeking vengeance from us, the ultimate projection, right? And then of course, we're not going to go seek for a higher power, because that higher power is just going to hurt us. So that's the crux of the ego there, is the ego's religions are very, very scary. But the real truth of who the creator is, what the creator is it's infinite love, not fear, not vengeance. The more you can remind yourself that infinite love is your creator, the easier it's going to be for you to invoke that presence to take over in place of your small-minded thinking, which is the seat of all fear in your life. What do you do with fear when you notice it? Well, the first thing that I recommend that people do when they notice fear is recognize that if you're seeing or experiencing fear, then you must be trying to think all by yourself without any understanding of who you truly are as a soul. Because of course you're going to be afraid if you think you're all by yourself. So the first thing you do is you notice, oh, I'm experiencing fear. Therefore, I must be trying to think separately from my creator. I must be trying to think separately from infinite love. Since infinite love is who I am and who my creator is, if I call on infinite love and I ask for infinite love's presence to take over in the situation and I let go of my hold on the situation, fear will disappear. It has to. It has to. And then you can just take one little fear at a time. And what I do is I feel like I'm dropping it. I feel like gravity is my friend in there. I don't feel like I'm working through it or processing the fear. I just drop it. I just let go of it. I don't try to figure it out. I don't worry about what's going to happen with it. I just know that infinite intelligence has it, has this, knows what to do. I don't need to know all the ins and outs about what this fear is about, because usually it's just insanity anyway, and there is nothing to worry about. So I just learn how to drop one fear at a time. As I'm experiencing it, I recognize, ooh, this fear is an indication to me that I'm thinking all by myself. So I'm going to call on infinite intelligence and ask what to do. I ask to be led and guided in the moment. And then I'm just going to drop this fear. I'm going to let go of this fear. And instead, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to do what's in front of me to do, divinely guided and led every step of the way. If I take time through my day, which I don't always do, if I take time through my day and before I engage in something, just ask my internal guidance to show me the highest and best way to approach a situation, or what to say to somebody, or how to respond to somebody, then I'm never led into fearful situations. But that doesn't always work out so well for me, because I forget, because I'm just like everybody else. I have a forgetful, wandering, undisciplined mind, no matter how much I try to discipline it. So inevitably and invariably, fear will come up. So when it does, it's just a reminder to me, oh, I went back and started doing things all by myself again. I started thinking with that little personality mind rather than with my soul's mind, rather than with my higher mind. And now I can call on my internal guidance to lead me out of it, and I can drop it. I can literally drop that fear. That's my responsibility. That's my responsibility to let go of these fears. A lot of people say, God, please take my fears away from me. God's not going to do that. Infinite intelligence is not going to do that. Infinite intelligence is not going to attack you, and that's a form of attack. When you expect infinite intelligence to come in and invade your life and just fix everything for you, you're not going to get what you want. You have to be proactive. It's your responsibility to recognize your fear when you have it and be willing to let it go and to call upon that infinite intelligence in whatever form works for you, and to allow yourself to engage in that process of dropping that fear and letting go of your control over the situation and asking instead for a higher power to take over for you in that moment. You have to do that with your fears. Your responsibility is to take care of those fears for yourself. You can't just expect it to invoke a higher power and that they're going to do everything for you and you have no work to do. No, your letting go of fear is your own responsibility. And sometimes it's a painstaking responsibility where you have to take one fear at a time. And those of you that work in the dark magic understand what I'm talking about. The first thing that you got to do when you notice that you've got any kind of fear, like I said, is to recognize that I must be trying to fix or handle or engage all by myself. So I'm gonna take a moment and I'm gonna call on my inner guidance. I'm going to call on my inner guidance and ask to be shown a different way, and ask to be shown what to do and how to do it. I'm going to ask to be shown how to let go of this fear, and I'm going to just drop it. I'm just going to drop it and not think all by myself. I'm going to think in consort with my higher self, which is that inner guidance. You've got to remind yourself how powerful your mind is. We believe that our thoughts don't really have that much power. We like to pretend that we think that our thoughts have power, but we don't really believe our thoughts have power. Because if we believed our thoughts had power, we would be much more careful about how we used our minds. Taking responsibility for the fearful experiences and responses in our lives is basically all about taking responsibility of our minds and how we think. And you have to recognize that while you're thinking by yourself as a separate little individual ego, that you are a frail person. Because frailty is what you're projecting. Frailty is what that whole thought form is about. I'm frail. I'm insignificant. I'm vulnerable. And so while you are thinking like that, you are frail. You do have a lot to be afraid of. You are a victim. That's true. All of those things are true. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's not that you're bad for thinking that way. We're all trained to think that way. In fact, it takes a great heroic effort to think in a new way in this world. So don't think badly about yourself because you have fears. Don't think that there's something wrong with you because you have fearful circumstances in this world. Everybody does. That's what this world is all about. So recognizing your own frailty within that thought system is what should cause you to seek for something that isn't frail, something that is eternally strong, and that is your Creator. That is your Creator. And your internal guidance system will show you step by step by step how to reconnect with that. Because if you can rely on the strength of your Creator rather than your own personal separate strength, then you don't have anything to be afraid of. There is no reason for fear. Can you see that? That the strength of infinite intelligence, infinite love, infinite being that creates you in the moment, if you rely on that strength rather than your own, then you really don't have anything to be afraid of. So that let go and let God is very, very powerful, but it's not always easy. It's not as easy as people say it is when they are very trite about that. Let go and let God. That's a very challenging experience for most of us because it takes a great deal of trust. So start small. Start small. Start with the little things in your life. Start with the little things that cause you uncertainty. What should I wear? What should I make for dinner? The little baby decisions, those are types of fears. If you're having any indecision or qualms about something, it's a type of fear. So start with what's safe for you. And invoke that presence and let go and let God, if you will, in those circumstances first so that you can build up your faith. You can build up your trust. And as you start to notice, wow, when I let go and I really invoke this presence and this power to be with me and to guide me every step of the way, things really work out. Then you can start expanding your sphere of influence over things in your life. You don't want to start with the big things necessarily until you've built up your faith. But build up your faith you must, because fear is what this world is all about. Fear is what this world is all about. They say money makes the world go round. Love makes the world go round. Not this world. Fear makes this world go around. Fear is what gets you in this world. That's what controls every single one of us. So the idea that we want to let go of fear is a very lofty one. So be aware that it's a big deal. So start small and start where you are, but recognize that it can be accomplished. It can be accomplished that we let go of fear in this world. It can be accomplished that we have a fearless experience in this world. But it does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of commitment. It does take a lot of practice. And as we do that, the good news is that not only are we making our lives better and that we're starting to catch a glimpse of the truth of our lives that is beyond all of the fear in this world, but we are beacons of light for other people. And they may not understand what you're doing. They may never use the techniques that you use, but they are guided and led by your example. It happens more than you realize. You are so powerful, not only over your own life, but as an example to other people. I don't think that you realize how many people look to you for their cues. A lot of times we don't think that we have any influence whatsoever on others, and that's absolutely not true. You have a lot of influence, and that's why taking care of fear is such an important thing, because it's a way of taking responsibility not only for ourselves, but for each other. So one little step at a time, guided moment by moment by moment, undoing fear, releasing and dropping fear is a huge, huge goal to have. And it's a wonderful goal. And if you can dedicate your life to the undoing of fear, you're going to be amazed at how different your life can really look. And it's okay if you don't get it right all the time. I don't. I don't get it right most of the time. But the fact that I get it right some of the time and that I'm undoing more fear today than I did yesterday, that's huge. And it feels so amazing. And you realize how much power you have. So look at that this week. Look and see what the fears are, and don't run away from them. Turn and face those fears and call in that guidance and say, I want to undo this. I want to unlock this. I'm going to be freed from this, but I can't do it by myself. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. I so appreciate you. Blessed be.